Examples you can download from this link. I'll be sharing it with you. Okay, our daily base examples will be here. So I'm copying it. Keep this link with you. Okay, so all examples books will be available here. Spring examples you can see, Hibernate examples. Same way Spring Boot also will be added here. Okay, Spring Boot projects also you can see here. So keep this link with you. And daily based examples, right? I will upload into Git and share that Git link also. Okay. So finally, how many links you will be getting? One Spring blog. There you have all examples, and you will be getting Spring videos blog. Daily videos you will see there. Daily based videos will be uploaded. Okay, and one Git repo will be shared. There you will see daily based examples. So all preset of examples are available. Daily what we do in class also will be available with the videos and book also. Spring material. Okay. You can ask for this four if I miss something. Okay. You can ask for this four. Okay. So blog will be available mostly by tomorrow. Okay. For videos, and this is also now ready. Already I shared with you, and this will be ready from tomorrow, and this one also. As soon as examples we start, right? This will be available, and material also I'll share. Okay. As we started with the Spring Core module. Okay. Shall we continue? We started to learn core module, right? Let me open the yesterday's paint. Okay. Yeah. So Spring Core module is important module to learn or to understand all other modules. So here we learn how Spring will work, what are all the Spring core features, Spring containers. Okay, importantly, we discuss about Spring containers and Spring core features here. There are multiple features we have that we learn here. This is the important module. On top of this module, we can learn and understand all other modules. Okay. One more thing that I want to do, I'll be putting you all in mute. Okay. So whenever you want, you can raise hand. I'll unmute you. Okay. So whenever you want to ask a question, right? Just raise your hand or else ping me in the chat, and I will enable you. Okay. I will unmute you once after session is done. Okay. Yeah. So Spring Core module is the base module. Once we learn with it, other modules can easily you can understand. Just a minute. Test one. Just a minute, please. Just a minute. So this session link, session ID 685. Okay. Yeah. So out of core module, what topics we will be covering here is we will learn about containers first. Spring core module have containers. We will talk about that containers first. IOC containers and Spring core features. Spring core features we talk. Okay. So the most important thing is first we should learn about containers. Okay. So even before that, right? We learned about Pozo class in yesterday's session. We learned about Pozo class. Why? Because throughout the Spring application development, right? Throughout the application development, usually we follow MVC architecture. Remember it? Okay. We follow MVC architecture while doing Spring based applications or any Java or .NET based applications. We follow strictly this architecture. As per MVC, we have view layer for front end. Here we can use front end technologies, HTML, JavaScript, CSS, any mobile API. You may have any technologies here for front end. And coming to back end, as we are into Java, here also you can choose any technology for your controller and model layer. Yesterday we talked about POJOs, right? So during implementation of Spring based applications, you can consider these classes are like simple POJO classes, at least partial POJOs. Okay. On top of it, we will add some more concepts on top of POJO. But at least if you learn with POJO, okay, POJO will have private variables and public getters and setters. That's what we learned yesterday, right? Pozo, a plain old Java object, a simple Java class, a simple Java bean class, and you know how to write that classes. So simple Java bean classes or simple Java class is sufficient for controller business DAO logic. Along with the Pozo, we will add some more extra controller methods here, business methods here, DAO methods, so that your application is completed end to end. End to end application is completed. But when they want to exchange information, right? When I have a request from front end to back end, if I request, if I send a request from front end to back end, controller will hit first. From here, controller, if it wants to talk with business, controller should create object for business and it should talk with business class. And if business wants to talk with DAO, it should create DAO class object and it should talk. So if you consider A controller class name, B for business class, C or D for DAO class. When they want to talk to each other in that particular class methods, you need to create object. If A creates B object, then A can talk with B. If A have B object, via B object I can make a call. So then I can establish communication between A to B. If B wants to talk with D, B should create a D class object. This is the first step that I need to do once after implementation, right? When I want to make a call from one class to another class, this is what I need to do first. I should able to create objects and I should make calls. So from A to B I can call, B to D I can call. If D wants to talk with the database, you can create connection object here, driver manager dot get connection will give you connection. Using this connection you can talk with the database also. Once you create Pozo classes, the next thing that what you need to do, you should create objects and you can able to communicate with them. Each can talk together, right? A can talk with B, B can talk with D. But this hard coding style of object creation is not recommended in Spring. While using Spring, right? This hard coded way of object creation is not recommended. When you create objects using new keyword, right, what will be happening here? Consider this is something like a food booking application like Swiggy or Zomato. So there will be many users ordering foods on daily basis. So let's say here users are morning, you know, people wake up for the breakfast and consider 1,000 people made food order. When they hit this code, let's say if you implement your food order controller, food order business and food order DAO with this hard coded approach for this 1,000 customers, when they hit, right, each time for each user it will create new object if you follow hard coded approach within your method. For each request one new object will be created. So for 1,000 users, three objects, one controller object, business object, DAO object, altogether 3 into 1,000, 3,000 objects will be created on your JVM or in your server RAM. So for 3,000 objects it's okay, but when users request increases to up to 1 lakh, 1 lakh objects will be created on your RAM. RAM will go out of memory if huge number of objects are creating, and it may degrade your application performance also. As I have three classes only, why I should create lakhs of objects on RAM? Can't I manage with only one single object for entire application by following singleton pattern? But three objects are not sufficient for a billion customers or millions, billions of customers. Three objects are sufficient. You can make these objects as singleton, but you need to write that singleton kind of logic. Means you need to learn good design patterns here to apply that. And not only that, when you follow this hard-coded approach, between your layers, right, controller to business or business to DAO, it will be like tightly coupled layers. The applications layers will become tightly coupled when you do hard-coded approach. So the problem with old style hard-coded approach is, as a developer, you should know best design patterns to make your object singleton. You should learn all the design patterns to make your object singleton. And the layers, backend layers, right? The application layers are tightly coupled. Application classes will be tightly coupled. So maintenance is difficult. If your application layers are tightly coupled. If I hard code it, definitely A is having B dependency. If I hard code here D class dependency, definitely B is having D dependency, right? But if you see driver manager.get connection, it is not directly dependent to any database. Same code you can use for any database, just you need to change username password. It's okay. But A to B, B to D, you have dependency, tightly coupled dependencies. How we can reduce them, how I can remove that dependencies, how I can get all best design patterns into my application. You need to learn a lot if you use simple Java to do that. But if I use here Spring framework, Spring will do all this for you. It will make your application classes loosely coupled and it can create objects for you. Okay. Instead you doing it, IOC can do it for you. It can create objects of your application. Okay. So that is what first thing that we learn in Spring IOC. Okay. Spring core module. We learn how container will create objects. Why container should create? Because if you see old generation applications which used to build in EJBs or servlets, this is how they used to run. Okay, let me draw one more image here. I have front end here. Front end, if you use simple HTML, CSS, here the container for this views is right. We are talking about containers. Okay, for this views HTML and CSS, the container is JavaScript where you can run them. You can run it on any browser. Browser is the container. Browser itself having compiler and interpreter for this HTML code. Browser is having DOM parser. It will convert your HTML to views. So browser is the container. Browser is the container for your views. For your views, browser is the container. Browser is the container. Whoever running your classes, right? You can consider it as a container. For HTML views, browser is the container. So you can run it on browser. If you have Angular kind of code or React, they run on Node platform. So Node is the container. Node is the container for Angular and React based applications. So you need to deploy them on Node platform. You need to have Node server. Without that, they can't run. So Node is the container. Now coming to backend, who can handle our classes? What kind of containers we have? Okay, spelling mistake. Okay, just so we have two containers here. Browser for HTML, Node for Angular and React. Coming to backend implementations, when I choose Java, what technologies I have and what kind of containers I have. So for controller implementations, controller job is read data which is coming from front end. As per MVC, right? The controller job is read front end. Who do that? Controller. How can I implement it? Whichever data coming from front ends, how can I read it here? Which technologies I can use? The basic core technology from Sun Microsystem is servlets. You can use servlets as a technology here. Servlet you can use. When you use servlets you can't run by directly creating servlet objects. You need a server to run the servlets. Server only will create objects for them. Which server creates objects? Tomcat. A web server will create objects and can able to run servlets. So servlets are having capability to receive front-end requests to backend. Okay, when you are implementing front-end backend applications like web applications, to read your web data, servlet components we have to use in our backend. So Tomcat is a container. Tomcat is a container which will create objects for your servlets. Servlet objects created and managed by Tomcat container. And what about business? Business logic or service, you may say. Here we will be having all your business logic, B logic. This is for pure business logic. So what technologies you can use? Simple core Java algorithms must be sufficient here. Apart from that, if you need transactions, distributed features, then EJB session bean concepts, where EJB session beans concepts we used to use here. It will apply extra features like global transactions, service discovery for distributed applications. EJB session beans is having that feature. This is for distributed applications. Okay. Anyway, EJB session beans are special components. When you use EJB session beans here, you should run EJB on WebLogic. Application server is required. WebLogic kind of application server is required to run your EJB. So WebLogic is the container. WebLogic is the container who creates and manages EJB objects. And for DAO, database operations, EJB session beans with the JDBC combination you can use. For JDBC, you don't need any special container. No container required. No container required. And advanced concepts given in EJB entity beans, it is ORM. EJB entity beans ORM we used to have before Hibernate, right? People used to use EJB entity beans ORM. So again for this ORM also you need to use WebLogic container. So when you implement your application using these technologies, right? Servlets for controller, EJBs for business logic to handle transactions and all, and EJB entity means for database operations if you use. You need one web container and a servlet container. So you need Tomcat and WebLogic, or else WebLogic itself is having web container also. Tomcat is having only web container. Tomcat is having only web container. So Tomcat can handle only servlets, whereas WebLogic can handle both servlets and EJBs. So you can have one WebLogic server to run complete backend code. Here you can use WebLogic if you have EJBs combination. You can use WebLogic, and this WebLogic will take care of creation of all these objects. And just talking about object creation, right? You need not to create objects. Usually containers will create objects for you. First job containers will do what? They create objects for you. So who do create objects here when you use servlets and EJBs? WebLogic will take care of objects creation, your controller objects, business class objects, and your DO objects. Everything will be created by WebLogic. You need not to use any new keyword here. Using new keyword is a bad practice in real-time application. Because when you use new keyword and create objects, for every request it will create a brand new object. Unnecessarily it will consume lot of memory into your server. Instead, you use singleton objects. WebLogic used to create the singleton objects. Servlet objects are singleton, EJB session beans are singleton, entity bean objects also singleton. Who do that? WebLogic will do that. But when we use these containers, right? These containers and technology stacks, servlets, as I was giving example, right? If you people go with this servlets and EJBs combination, first learning curve is very difficult. Developers need to have good skills, skilled dev team we need. So this development team need to spend lot of hours to learn servlets and EJBs, and developing code and testing your code is not easy. Development and testing is very difficult. Once after doing a small changes also in your code, lot of compilations and deployments you need to do. Even one single line, one simple character if you change it also in your code, lot of recompilations and redeployments, var, jar, ER conversions and deployments. For 1 second change, you need to spend 1 hour for deployment to test your code. So lot of development time will eat here. So it will eat lot of development time, lot of testing time. So finally, productivity is very less. Productivity is very less if you go with this technology stack. Okay, so this is from the productivity point of view. And what about deployment and maintenance? You need to buy servers. Okay, servers. You need to procure servers. You need to invest on servers also. You need to invest on servers also. When you choose this technology stack, right? Development is difficult. You need to buy servers. Then what is the benefit? Earlier we don't have any other technology. So this is how we used to implement our controllers, business and DAO classes using this technology stack. And only who can afford this, right? Who can afford this team and who can afford these servers? They only used to do this development. Like mostly banking applications used to use this technology stack, banking or some healthcare products or e-commerce applications. Who is having great revenue, right? They may choose this technology stack those days. And small applications, they can't even imagine Java for the backend because everything was so costly. So now Spring made it easy. Spring and Hibernate made it easy. Slowly, right? Industry revolution started and many alternatives came into the market and they made it simple. Okay, development of your code is simple, testing your code is easy, and easily you can get the productivity. Learning curve also simple. Developers need not to learn many skills. Simply if they learn that so and so framework, how it is working, that itself is sufficient. You can achieve great productivity and very less investment when you choose Spring technology here. You can use struts or JSF. These are old MVC frameworks. You can deploy them into Tomcat, or else you can use old Spring MVC framework. This is also can be deployed it into Tomcat. Tomcat is mostly open source. Why these frameworks need to deploy it into Tomcat? Because any web framework internally will use servlets only, so you need to use Tomcat, or you can use Spring Boot. You need not to procure any special Tomcat. Spring Boot itself it came up with inbuilt Tomcat, so you never notice Tomcat software there. Inbuilt Spring Boot itself is having Tomcat. So while using Spring Boot, no Tomcat you need to use from external. Spring Boot itself having internal Tomcat. So you need not to procure any special Tomcat server. Built-in embedded Tomcat we have. So when I go with Spring Boot, no Tomcat server. For controller part, Spring Boot is advanced. So this is what we learn finally, right? There you will not see any servers. Spring Boot is very simplified framework. And what about this business part? I can use Spring Core module here and Spring Transactions, Spring AOP for my business layer. Do I need any special container for them? Nothing. What about a DAO implementation? I can use Hibernate or I can use Spring Data JPA. This is again integrated with Hibernate only. So do you need any special containers? Nothing. When you go with the Spring MVC combination, when you go with the Spring MVC for controller, okay? When you go with the Spring MVC combination, Spring MVC with this tag, you need to use Tomcat. Your application finally will be delivered as var file. Let's say if you implement swiggy.var, web archive file you need to create, and you should deploy it into Tomcat server. Tomcat is your container. When you go with the Spring Boot combination, when you go with Spring Boot combination here, Spring Boot with all other Spring modules, your application need not to be a var. It can be a simple jar file. You can run it on Java. Just Java runtime is sufficient for you in your servers. So when you purchase a server here to deploy your jar file, just a simple server space is sufficient without any software. Let's say if I buy Linux server, GoDaddy is providing, or anything. You may choose AWS or anything. I chose one Linux. On that Linux, I just need to install Java. That's it. I can run my application there. I need not to have any Tomcat server or WebLogic servers. So end of the day, if you see here, no server dependencies. So from investment side, just I need to spend this Linux server cost only. Hardly monthly 500 rupees is sufficient for me. So now I can imagine applications for small scale business also, because end of the day the investment is 500 rupees, and Java is open source, free. You can install it, and if you need any database also you can install MySQL, again free, in my Linux server. Just 500 rupees per month, monthly rental is sufficient for my production. Here usually my code is running production server. So you can suggest now Java for any kind of business, not only big scale businesses, small scale business, like whoever having monthly revenue of 10,000 rupees or 20,000 rupees, small business also can imagine applications, because end of the day the investment cost is very less. And what about development curve? Is it very difficult? Do I need to groom the people like years together? Whereas in Serlets and EJBs, at least 1 year you need to spend to learn. Here, do you need to spend that long to implement the Spring Boot based applications or Spring based applications? No. Hardly in 1 2 months you will get full capabilities to implement end to end application. So learning curve is simple. So for any small scale business, you can get developers also from the market. Now packages are high, but because many people not aware that Spring is easy, so they are not coming towards Java by imagining that Java is ocean. Since beginning people used to say this word, so they are not stepping into Java. But if your friends or anybody are really interested, you can welcome them. Now Java is simple, not like ocean. Easily they can learn. Hardly 1 month for core Java and 1 2 months for Spring. Bus they can become a Java developer. Okay, so learning curve is simple, and using Spring also simple, and I need not to have any special containers. So then where you will run your application? If it is a Spring MVC based application, only for your controller classes you will use Tomcat. In case of MVC based, for remaining classes, right? Not even remaining, for MVC classes also. One single controller class is having control of Tomcat. The remaining classes which we run right in IOC, right? MVC and core transaction AOP, all the classes will be managed by your IOC container. Your IOC containers will create objects for these classes. Which classes? all your Spring Boot classes, this classes. Finally, who create objects? Usually, hard-coded object creation is not recommended. So then who create objects? IOC container will create object for your classes. Which classes? All classes. A to Z, whatever you implement, all classes objects are created by IOC container. How it will create? Simple. I'll show you example here. First, we thought that each class implementation like a poser class only. Okay. Simple poser style is sufficient for your controller or service or DAO. We need not to have huge skills here. Simple posers, if you know, that's sufficient. So I have a poser for controller, service, DAO. We learned how to create poser. We learned how to create posers. Means a simple Java class. You know how to create simple Java class. Class A. Don't you know how to put the statements? You know. So you can consider this as a simple poser class. You may have variables here, or you may not have. Consider I don't have any variables. I have a simple poser class, public class A. Consider this is like your controller. Public class B is my service. Public class C is my DAO. These all are my posers. This simple writing Spring based applications. Simple poser classes. So this is first step that you need to learn how to write poser class. Step 1, poser class. What next? Second step, you need to configure that in XML file. Step 2, configure them into Spring XML file. This is one step that you need to learn. How to configure this poser classes into XML file. Again, this is not rocket science. Simple mapping file. Simple mapping file only. One XML you should create. Second step, right? First, after creation of your classes, you need to use Spring XML file. The Spring XML file is mainly having one root tag called beans. The root tag name called beans. Only one tag. You know, right? In XML, only one root tag we will have. Root tag means parent tag. Starting to ending. Beginning to ending, we will have only one tag. That is what we call root tag. Within this root tag, you can configure your posers. Bean class is equal to A. Can't you learn this much and remember it? Easy, right? Your class name you should configure here. A class you should configure here, B class you should configure here, and C class. All your three classes you need to configure. Is it really difficult? No. Why I am doing it? As I said, hard-coded objects are not recommended. I'll be creating objects via Spring. That's why I am configuring them here. So this much easy. Write poser class. No much technical skills required. Simple Java class. And configure XML file just to remember two tags. Beans is the root tag and bean is the child tag that we use. So each class and it's a bean tag. Each class and its bean tag. Thus your development is done. Finally, you load step 3. Load it into IOC. You have a special container designed and given. Load into IOC. Again, how to write this code? This line number 3. Step 3. You returned your poser classes. You configured poser classes into XML file. and loading it into IOC is simple. You need to have a main method class. You know right how to main method. Don't ask me how to write main method. You know how to write main method class. In your main method class, put this statement application context AP equal to new class path XML application context. Just remember this single line. Bus. Put your XML here. That's it. Now you are done with your Spring application. This simple Spring application is. Step 1 create poser classes. Step 2 your configuration file. Step 3 load configuration file into container. So you may have doubt that is this the container like Tomcat WebLogic? Yes. Your application context is the container. Containers usually we will get in the form of .exe files or .jar files. You need to download Tomcat. See Apache Tomcat software I downloaded. So as soon as I installed, it given so many folders: web apps, library, temp, bin, config. Inside web apps folder, I need to put my var files and start the server from bin folder. So there is a start button. From here, start, batch file. I need to double click it so that it will start my Tomcat server. Do I need to do this much to start my IOC container? Nothing. Your IOC container is a simple Java class. This is not a special software that you need to install and you need to learn about it. This is a simple Java class. You just call this Java class from your main method. Calling the simple Java class means you are starting container. So now containers became like a simple Java classes. Earlier containers are like special set of softwares. We need to download and we should learn them how to use. Nothing to do with Spring container here. Just Spring container they given in the form of simple Java class. So you can load XML file here. So this simple Java class itself is a container. So what containers need to do as a first step? It should create objects of your classes. As soon as you load this into IOC container, create objects of application. All your objects it need to create. That's it. It will perform that very well. But from where I will get this class? Which libraries I need to use? So as soon as you implement it to use these classes, right? Add this jar files into your application. Spring core jar. Is it core jar file? Yeah. Spring context jar file. Commons logging. Add this jar files to your application. And there is one more Spring Beans jar. Just add this jar files into your application class path. That's sufficient. While using JDBC, you used to add, right? Why? Because driver class is part of that jar file. Similarly, you need to use these jar files because these jar files are having this container. So add these jar files to your application. Basically, core is having core container, context is having advanced container. We talk about it later. So first step, you need to know how to create poser classes. That we all are very clear how to write simple poser classes. The next step that you need to learn is how to configure it into XML file. Then how to load it into container. Okay. So if you learn or if you understand this first, we can go to the next topics. Okay. Yeah. Go ahead. Am I audible? Yeah. Tomorrow I need to do little bit editing, and I will upload it. Okay. By evening it will be uploaded, and from tomorrow the blog will be available for you. Okay. Now first thing, right, to practice these examples, what you need to do to practice today example, right? First, to download jar files. Okay, here when you click right, it will download jar files. First, to download it. Are you all following me? So once again I'll share this link with you. Yeah, we discuss, Manas, we go depth into each topic. you know First, this feels like simple, but if if somebody miss this, the small concept, what is poser class, how configuring it into XML, and how to load it into container, and what is the importance of container here, later points, later topics will become difficult. So first, you know keep your focus on this. Okay, we discuss about all types of containers, all types of mm, objects creations, dependency injections, every feature will be discussed. So download jar files first here. So as soon as you click here, right, it will download jars. You all able to access this link which I shared? You can see it in your chart. You can access it, right? So as soon as you click here, you will get the jar files. All Spring jars you will get. So get them first and extract them. So then download the first example, extract it as well. Okay, zip files you just unzip it, extract all, and the Spring jar files also. Oh, sorry, I'm asking to compress. Just unzip it here, extract here. Okay, okay. So now you have your example and jar files here. So if you see jar files here, you have multiple. Okay, during your practice, you need to use these jars. Okay, and the example also, right? So each example you can import into your Eclipse and you can practice it as well. I'll show you. Okay. Otherwise, I'll be writing code for your convenience. I created it. So just to do this, go to File, Import, and choose option General here. General existing project into Workspace. Just click on Browse. Go to Download. Import your project. Finish. So this is first step that you need to do. Download and import it. After extraction, right? Import it here. Clear? Now check why this error is showing it here. Go to properties. Maybe in build path, it might show you these jar files are not available. While uploading, right, in my local that jars are available, so the same path was there in the class path as it is I uploaded, right? That's why showing this error. So go to build path and remove these jar files. There are three jar files, right, that I removed. Add same jar files now from this downloads. Commons logging, and two more jar files are spring beans and where it is spring beans, spring context, spring core. You can add them. That's it. Now error's gone. Now go to the code and open and see it. I have a simple bean class here. In other words, a pozo class. Simple pozo class I have written. And if you want to increase the font size, go to window, font. Let me increase the font size. Text font, edit. Yeah. So this is the simple pozo class with the default constructor. With the constructor. Pozo class with the default constructor I have here. So as soon as somebody calls this constructor, that means they are creating object for your pozo class. How you can recognize that this class object is creating? If somebody calls this, you can imagine that this object is creating. So as soon as you see this line number 5 execution, that means your object is created. Test class object. Okay. So first step, I have a pozo class here. Step 1, I have pozo class. Step 2, I need to configure it into XML file. So here I have a XML file. This is Spring XML file. And what is the main root tag? As I said, beans. Inside beans root tag, I need to configure my class. Bean class attribute, your class name, fully qualified path. Your class name test, which is there in beans package. So give that complete path here. And one ID for your class. We talk about this ID also. This ID to identify it. Okay. So configuring it into XML file also done. Now load it into container. Basically here I talked about application context. This is very advanced container and this is the core container. There are two types of containers. Okay. We will talk about them. Now I am trying to loading my XML into bean factor. This is the core container. Core container. We have two types of containers. This is the core container. Out of it, this is core container. Like Tomcat version 8, version 9. Bean factory is like a lower version. Application context is a higher version. Now into this XML bean factory, I am loading my XML file. Okay. Then using this ID, you can try to fetch your object. You are not creating object, but you are requesting for the object. I am trying to asking this object for 4 times. Call any number of times. Container by default will maintain singleton object. One object only it will create for you. You try to call it any number of times. So I am calling get bean t, get bean t, get bean t, get bean t. 4 times I am trying to getting my bean. Like I am trying to ordering food, biryani, breakfast, milk, and some groceries. 4 requests I am placing. So you request for biryani or food or groceries, anything. Will it create multiple objects? No. While using this core container or advanced container, while using your IOC containers, right? End of the day, they don't create many objects. They create object only once. One object is sufficient. You want to place order, place it. But object is one. That's it. Enough. You have only one life. You born, You live and you go. Similar way, your application classes also. One object only will be created until your application shut down. Only one object sufficient. So now run it and see. Test object is created. How many times my object is created? My constructor is executed only one time. So my poser class test object, one object is created. I'm just comparing these objects, T1, T2, T3, T4 objects, right? I'm just comparing them here, whether they all are equal or not. It is saying all are equal, means same object only you are referring. Same object only you are referring. If you call any number of times also, container will not bother about object. It will create object only once, the same object it will be given to you. Okay. So tomorrow we will talk about containers and their benefits, how many types of containers we have. Okay. So today, right? Yeah, just a minute, just a minute. Let me conclude. Today, the conclusion is okay. Today's conclusion is you all must understand what are all the containers and why they are all for, right? Have you got that? Containers are runtime environments. Okay, containers are runtime environments. Without that environment, we can't run that files. Like HTML code, if you have without a browser, you can't run it. If you have Angular or React without Node.js, you can't run it. Okay. If you have servlets without Tomcat, you can't run it. If you have EJBs without WebLogic, you can't run it. Same way, if you implement your application using Spring MVC Spring Boot without IOC container, you can't run it. Because this is the one who creating objects. Like in browser, who creates your DOM objects for HTML also objects will be created. DOM objects will be created and manipulated by your browser. Browser is having that DOM parser, like your Java interpreter compiler, right? Browser will do this. Same way for servlets, who create objects Tomcat. For EJBs, EJB container, like WebLogic will do that. And when you choose Spring Framework for your MVC, means for your controller classes or business classes, DO classes, who create objects for all these classes end of the day? Your IOC containers. How to write these classes then? Simple POSO classes. We know how to write these classes like a simple POSO classes, and we know how to use these containers. I mean, we learned today. So end of the day, you will be writing simple poses and loading it into IOC container. That's it. Your job is done. You are done. You are a Spring developer. That's it. Some more flavors we add. Like I want to prepare, food or curry. First thing that you need to learn how to chop pieces and how to, ignite your gas, and you need to put some oil and you need to start preparation. After that, you can add ingredients as per your taste, convenience. So this is the basics thing. How to create poser class and how to load it into container. That's it. Now you are ready to go to add all the ingredients. Why? Because container is the important one. Without container, we can't create objects. I mean, you can create by using new keyword, but I'm saying don't use it. If you use new keyword, that's your class. You are responsible for your object. Nobody is going to give free features for it. If you try to create your servlet objects, first it will not allow you, but if you try to create servlet objects on your own by using new keyword, then it will not be a servlet. Without Tomcat, you can't run servlets. Tomcat only should create servlet object. EJB containers only should create EJB objects. Similar way, when you write your POSO classes, if you use IOC container, it will create objects for your POSO classes. Can't I create object by using new keyword? You can create, but nobody. going to provide features to it, benefits to it. If you have Aadhaar card, then only you will get government schemes. If you don't have, nobody give you schemes. You need to write POSO class and you need to load via container only. Then only you will get Spring features. If you simply write a class and if you use new keyword, then you should take care of your class. Nobody gonna support your class. Because when you put new keyword, that means you are telling that I'll take care of this class. And that is bad practice also. It creates multiple objects for every request. Yeah. So end of the day, these containers doing what? They are doing great job. They create objects for us to make very less number of objects into your RAM to improve your application performance. Though you talk about Tomcat or WebLogic or your Spring IOC containers. They are great because they create only one object. Unnecessarily, they will not create multiple objects. So that your application performance is good. One object only it will create. As soon as I load A class, B class, C class into my container, it will create one A object, one B object, one C object. That's it. So if you consider this is like an order class, orders controller, orders business, orders DAO. If Naveen requested for groceries or if somebody requested for breakfast, for anything, it will not create multiple objects. It will accept all your requests, but one object is sufficient. Though thousands of users request here, one object is sufficient. So as soon as one object only created in your application performance will be good because it will not consume huge memory. It will consume very less memory. So the remaining memory it can use for processing your application. So your application will be faster. So all such best design practices they used as part of framework and given to us. Just you need to learn how to use it and what design patterns they used it internally. That's it. Just for your understanding sake or for interview sake. Otherwise, container is doing miracles behind. It is doing a lot for you. Just you need to know how to use it. That's it. Okay. Yeah. So that is what conclusion I want to talk about containers here. So containers are heroes. Without them, we can't run any application. So container is very, very important. Yeah. Go ahead. Somebody do it. Both are same, right? End of the day. Though via Maven you do it or by by adding jar files. What is the difference? If you create Maven project, even it will add that jars to your class path. Okay. Yeah. So we can do it via Maven also. Nothing to worry. Okay. So for our convenience only, I brought all the jars there. Okay, so that you can you know see what jar files I am using and what is the need of that so and so jar. Okay. Yeah. So any doubts or anything, any understanding issues or any suggestions? Okay, is it good? Yeah, fine. So tomorrow we will start with containers discussion. Okay, because without containers we can't do anything. So one by one, all the features we will discuss. What containers will do and how to benefit from the containers. Okay, that is what we are going to learn end of the day from Spring Core module. All Spring containers and its features. Features of containers we will discuss. Okay, long way to learn. Okay, don't worry. Learning Spring is very simple.